So even with the Oilers out of the playoffs, with the World Championships going on right now, there is an awful lot of hockey stuff to talk about, so let's continue in that vein. I want to talk about a story that spun out of the World Championships, in particular Team Canada. So when we got that first run of players, the initial team selection, you always get pretty much like, the best players making themselves available after the end of the regular season. Very rarely does this actually turn out to be like the final roster for Team Canada, because they are allowed to add players at a certain date. Typically, that tends to fall after the first round of the playoffs is concluded. And as it just so happens this year, not only did Team Canada add Evan Bouchard and Darnell Nurse from the Oilers, which to me really confirms for me that people have really caught on to this idea, that your top level elite international teams, they're built through the World Championships. And so if you want to increase your chances of being added to, say, an Olympic roster or a World Cup roster, you should say yes if Team Canada calls for the World Championships. Looks like Evan Bouchard and Darnell Nurse have leaned into that, and I love to see it. But that's not actually the story that I'm going to talk about here. What I'm going to talk about here is something that some people have actually considered to be something of a controversy surrounding this team. And personally, I don't consider it controversial at all. But when the team was first named, they announced that Macklin Celebrini was going to be the captain for Team Canada at the 2026 World Hockey Championships. That's a fantastic decision. Not only is he the best player of all the players who didn't make it into the Stanley Cup playoffs this year, but he is a guy that Canada is going to be looking at as a mainstay, for the next 20 years at least. Okay, well, no, pardon me, at least. That's, scratch that. But for close to the next 20 years. Macklin Celebrini is a guy that Team Canada is going to be looking at as a mainstay for their teams on the international stage. And so the best time to start developing him in that leadership role does happen to be right now. And guess who else seems to know that? None other than Sidney Crosby. The guy who was just for the majority of the Olympic tournament, was Team Canada's captain, was Team Canada's captain at the Four Nations Challenge last year, has been the captain at almost every international event that he's competed in. And so I think that there were a lot of people who just assumed that when he agreed to join Team Canada after the Pittsburgh Penguins were eliminated in the first round by the Philadelphia Flyers, that Sidney Crosby would be joining the team and they would be making a change at the captaincy position. Based on reports that I've heard, Macklin Celebrini, he thought the exact same thing. And as a matter of fact, he stepped up and he said, if Sid's coming to join us, he should be the captain. But guess who didn't agree with that? Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby came forward and he said, no. This is Macklin's time to shine. Macklin Celebrini should be the captain of Team Canada for the 2026 World Championships of Hockey. And that is the direction that the team has moved in. Now, a lot of people consider that to be controversial. There are a lot of people who are saying that no, the hierarchy matters. Everything that Sidney Crosby has done in this sport, it matters. It's almost an insult, some people think. It's almost an insult to him that he's going to be second banana. As I understand it, he's not even going to wear an A at this point. He's just going to go out there, clean-chested player, make his contributions, play the best hockey that he can play, because when it comes to wearing that maple leaf, Sidney Crosby always does. And he's letting that torch be passed to Macklin Celebrini. Because whether anybody likes it or not, the days of Sidney Crosby as a top-level hockey competitor, they might not necessarily be over, but they're definitely winding down. I mean, he's 40 years old. Still a great player at 40 years old, but definitely not the same Sid that he used to be. And nobody is aware of that more than Sidney Crosby. I guarantee you of that. It might not be fun to say it, but Sidney Crosby knows that he's had his time, and it's been a great time. Like, absolutely no question. 2 Olympic gold medals. He did win a World Cup, even though it was that weird World Cup with the team rookies and the team North America, and not what you would call like a full field World Cup, but in my opinion, it still counts. The Four Nations face-off, they won that. Multiple world championships. He's won the World Junior Championships. He's had a fantastic time as one of the leaders of Team Canada. But he knows better than anybody else that it is time for him to pass the torch. And Macklin Celebrini is a great player to pass that torch to. I do think that everybody knows that Sidney Crosby, he's not going to go completely hands-off from the leadership position. He might not be wearing the C, he might not be wearing an A, but all you got to do is just give him that stall next to Macklin Celebrini. Let him get in Macklin Celebrini's ear and just counsel him. Just give him his best advice, and Sidney Crosby's best advice in terms of leadership is going to be pretty goddamn good. And Macklin Celebrini and Team Canada are only going to be the better for it. So for all of the people who are making some kind of a big controversy over it, I don't fail to understand the point that you're making, but lay it down. Back away from it. Sidney Crosby knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows full well that it's the time to do it. So just allow him. Allow him to do this thing now.